All right. Howdy, everybody. This is Harvey Slater, Holistic Nutrition Coach. How's it going? I'm here today with Ted Moreno, who is a certified hypnotherapist and high performance coach. In addition to being just a super awesome guy, you're going to love hearing from Ted today and what he has to say. And today we're going to talk a little bit about avoiding the negative influence of hyper-suggestibility and what on earth that is. So we'll just get right into it. First of all, Ted, why don't you tell us a little bit about what is hypnosis exactly and help people understand it and kind of get it out of that weird context that people are, that sometimes they think about with hypnosis, right?
Yes, I'd be happy to do that. First, I want to thank you for having me on your podcast interview. I really appreciate that. So when we talk about hypnosis, we're talking about a state of mind that we are in pretty much on a daily basis. So it's what we call a natural state of suggestibility. Suggestibility just means how we learn, okay? So we're in hypnosis upon first when we awake. We're in hypnosis before we go to bed. And it's very, very common that we go into a trance state while driving. So if you've ever missed your off-ramp while driving down the freeway because you're spacing out, that's because you're in a trance state. And probably the most common example of hypnosis is when you're watching a movie that you really enjoy, that you're really into. You know it's not real, yet you have an emotional response anyway. You get scared, you cry, you feel happy, you feel sad. And that's because you're very suggestible to what you're seeing and what you're hearing. So hypnosis is a natural state, nothing really extraordinary about it.
Cool. And where does someone like you get your training?
There's many different places you can get training. Some training is better than others. I consider my training to be top-notch. I graduated from the first accredited College of Hypnotherapy, which is the Hypnosis Motivation Institute in Tarzana. And that's been around for 50 years and still going strong. And I'm also an instructor there as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very good. So I can imagine that hypnosis and high performance training is somewhat of a specialized area of practice. How is business right now in the middle of this pandemic? I mean, this is a huge thing that's just been thrust upon all of us. So many changes, so many things going down really quickly. How is it affecting your practice, and how is it affecting you adversely or in a good way? And how are you helping people with what you do?
Okay, so those are three separate questions. So how's it affecting my business? Of course, there's a little bit of drop off when people are uncertain. You know, they have a tendency to hang on to their money to make sure they're going to have enough money for toilet paper and food and those kind of things, right? But, you know, Harvey, I've been doing remote hypnotherapy sessions, meaning phone and Skype, for many years. So a lot of those clients are still with me. Clients that I was seeing in person have transitioned over to remote hypnotherapy. So as of the beginning of last week, everybody realized they're probably going to be at home for a while. And people started getting in touch with me saying, hey, I really could use your help. So business is good. Mm-hmm. And the way I'm helping people right now mainly is that, you know, everything's changed. Our schedules have changed. Many people are at home with their spouses, something they're not used to, at home with their children. So for many people, getting into that schedule, right, being centered, being grounded, being focused, and being productive, if they're supposed to be working, is challenging for many people. So most people contacting me right now are wanting some help with that, as well as, you know, trying to get rid of this low level of anxiety that many people are feeling.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right, right. And speaking of anxiety, what in the heck is hyper-suggestibility, and how is that impacting your clients right now with everything that's going on? And elaborate on that, enlighten us a little bit about that, and help us understand what information can do to us or for us or against us.
Okay, so that's a really good question, and I think it's a really important thing to know right now. Mm-hmm. So again, suggestibility is how we learn or take in information. And we're suggestible to all kinds of different things. Mm-hmm. Now, hyper-suggestibility is being overly suggestible. So being overly suggestible or hyper-suggestibility is just another word for hypnosis. And believe me, you can be in what we call walking hypnosis. How does this happen? Well, all of a sudden, as I mentioned before, your schedule is completely different. You're not involved in the regular routine of getting up, going to work. Your spouse is at home. Your kids are at home, maybe, okay? And now you got to figure out a way to do everything you do remote, all right? Not only that, but there's a huge amount of information coming to us from the news media and various sources. And all of this can become very overwhelming. Not only that, but we're all concerned about our own health and well-being. How are we going to go shopping? How are we going to get our groceries? How are we going to afford whatever we need to afford? So when we become overwhelmed, our ability to critically analyze incoming information breaks down. Fight or flight gets triggered. We go into a state of what we call hyper-suggestibility. At that point, we can become very suggestible to not only our own negativity, but the negativity and fear that pervades the quote-unquote airwaves. So if we're not careful, if we spend too much time watching the news, and let's face it, most of it's pretty bad news, what happens is we get caught up in a negative feedback loop where we are very suggestible to the negativity and it just continues to feed on itself. Then we become overwhelmed, not productive, not focused, and very possible caught up in fear and anxiety.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I think it's interesting that you mentioned fight or flight because in nutrition and wellness, we actually, in my practice specifically, and I know other practices, other types of naturopathic medicine and things like that, there's always a radar up looking for possible disbalance in the autonomic nervous system, meaning is your fight or flight nervous system dominating or is your rest and digest nervous system dominating? Can you expand a little more on the fight or flight response and what kind of cues would a client demonstrate? What kind of, I guess, for lack of a better expression, symptoms would a client demonstrate that would give you a clue that this is happening and that they're being hyper-suggested, over the edge, so to speak?
Yeah. Well, so if you wake up and the first thing you do is check your phone and start reading the news, okay, you're overly suggestible to the news. And let's face it, the reason people are doing that is because they feel that information is going to protect them. And it will, but you don't need that information first thing when you wake up. So that's a pretty good sign, especially if your first few hours of the day are used to, maybe working out or maybe stretching or doing some kind of, affirmations, which is really what I suggest to many of my clients. So that's one idea or one symptom. The other symptom is like, for instance, if you can't get into your workouts, if you're not doing your workouts, if they're going by the wayside because you can't seem to find the mental space to do that, your diet's devolving, okay? You're not following Harvey's very good plan, right? You're not in touch with Harvey and you're just like focused on other things that are not productive. And I think the third symptom would be just a sense of unease, a sense of discomfort, a feeling of uncertainty. These are just three of the major symptoms that we're caught up in that negative feedback loop.
Okay, well, I guess I should make an appointment to come see you because lately I've noticed that when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is grab my phone and look at the stock market, which is probably really bad.
Well, if it's going up, it's good, but if it's
Today,
not
it was
going
awesome.
up.
And last week, not so much.
Right. Yeah.
All right.
So no. I mean, if you're a stock investor and that's what you do normally first thing in the morning, then great. But if, every down makes you freaked out and every up makes you elated, then, we've got this up and down thing, which doesn't really contribute to any type of consistency. Let me say something about that, if I may, okay?
Sure.
Right now, the best way to feel safe, the best way to feel secure, and to be healthy is to create a routine that is familiar and known, okay? To get into some routine, if that's, and I think that's normally what we do. So if we have some sort of routine, if we know what to expect each and every day, that's going to bring us a sense of calm because there's a sense of certainty, a sense of the known, okay? It's important to understand that when we're in that fight or flight response, it very negatively affects our bodies. It first and foremost lowers our immune system. And if we're eating bad and not exercising, that's not good for our health. And I think we all agree that we want to be very healthy right now. Mm-hmm. Okay. So just maintaining that sense of routine and daily certainty is important, not only for us, but for our kids as well.
I think that's actually a really perfect segue, because my next question was going to be around what kind of small actions or things within people's sphere of control could you recommend people do right now in the current situation with the COVID-19 pandemic and being ordered or recommended to stay home and stay away from other people. And I like what you basically already said, making reference to familiarity and consistency every day, because I think what people are dealing with the most, and where I'm getting the best feedback from people out there, is bringing a sense of calm and focus and groundedness to the this feeling of just not knowing what's going to happen. People are feeling very unsure about the future right now, and that's scary. And anytime a human being doesn't know what they can control, of course, that fight or flight just goes nuts and it goes crazy. And what's been helpful in our program here is coming up with a list of things you can do every day to actually improve the quality of your life, make a positive contribution to the situation, and make a difference. So what would you recommend would be some like 3 basic things in terms of using the knowledge of suggestibility to program yourself in a better way, a more productive way that's supportive, right?
Yes. Yeah, I'll give you 3 really important things, okay? So first and foremost, every night before you go to bed, create the next day. Make a schedule, okay? You know what? Before I go any further, let me step back. It's important that you be gentle with yourself. I saw a meme on Facebook that said, don't beat yourself up because you're not super productive during a global pandemic. Okay? So let's just be gentle on ourselves, okay? And let's just take it a day at a time if that's what we need to do, okay? Yeah. Now, I understand some people have to scramble to, drum up business and make some money. I totally understand, but, the 3 things I'm going to suggest to you are, number 1, every night before you go to bed or sometime in the evening, create a schedule for the next day, okay? As rigid or as loose as you want, have some sense of what you're going to do the next day. So that way, when you sleep, your mind becomes very familiar with that, and you wake up the next morning with a feeling of meaning and a feeling of purpose and mission, all right? And try to adhere to that schedule as much as you can, understanding that there's, disruptions and interruptions, etc. Number 2, I would suggest that you take some time every day to reach out to people that you love. If you have aged parents, check in with them. Give them a call, okay? People, friends, relatives that you haven't talked to in a long time. Get that sense of community, that sense of connection, okay? We don't have to be in this alone. We have the technology to reach out and form virtual communities. Take advantage of that, especially if you live by yourself. And then 3rd, you want to use the process of auto-suggestion to make sure your thoughts are where they need to be. So we can control our thoughts. We may not be able to control what's going on out there in the world, but we can control what we focus on and what we think. So use the tool of affirmations. And I think affirmations are underrated and very, very helpful. So first thing in the morning, last thing at night, when we are in that suggestible state, that's a great time to give ourselves suggestions like, I'm healthy, my immune system is strong, I'm focusing on the positive, I'm doing whatever I can do to take care of myself and my family, I'm calm, I'm relaxed, I'm at ease, and, I'm sending blessings out to the people that are having a hard time. Something along that lines. So those are the 3 things that I would suggest.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I don't know if you noticed, but I'm taking lots of juicy notes because you're giving us great information right now.
Glad you think so.
One follow-up. I may have learned this from you or where I read somewhere, or maybe a book that I've read, that you're, speaking of being suggestible, that you're more suggestible or more in tune with your unconscious, is more open like 30 minutes before bed and 30 minutes after you wake up. Is that true?
Yes, yes. Now it varies for some people. Some
Okay,
people are more suggestible for a longer period of time,
I see.
but we call that the magic 30 minutes. So yeah, typically after you wake up for about the next half hour, your critical mind is not completely organized.
Hmm.
You're in a somewhat more of a suggestible state.
Hmm.
Same thing right before you go to bed. I try to balance my checkbook sometimes late in the evening. It's impossible for me to do that because my critical thinking ability is starting to disintegrate. I think most people have that same experience. So yeah, first thing in the morning, last thing at night are times of natural suggestibility for us.
Great. So this idea of, or this recommendation of planning your day out before you go to bed and sort of making a declaration of what you're going to accomplish the next day is actually can be really powerful.
It is really powerful,
Mhm.
and I recommend it to all my clients.
Great. So for our listeners and followers who are working on establishing healthy habits at home and accomplishing these things on a daily basis, being consistent like you recommend, probably the most powerful thing of everything we talked about today would be to take a little bit of time every night to actually sit down and think about what they can realistically accomplish the next day and be kind to themselves in the process. Like, don't put themselves up to too much, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Because if you put yourself up to too much, you'll create the exact same situation you don't want, which is overwhelm.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my God, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do that. That's counterproductive.
Right, right.
Okay. I think if you have the time to take it a little bit more slowly, that would probably be a good opportunity to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand that if you're working, you have to get stuff done. And this is a great way to make sure that happens in a way that is fulfilling to you.
Right, right. Well, that is just a lot of great information loaded into 15 minutes. And I can personally attest to the efficacy of Ted's work. I've worked with Ted on a few things where I've hit some walls, and it's just really amazing what can happen when you tap into that subconscious mind and get that connection going for some good superhuman accomplishments, right?
Yes, yes, yes. And I have worked with you, Harvey, and
Ah,
it has really done me a lot of good. In fact, here's the thing that I printed out that you sent me with all these cool
oh,
exercises
yeah.
that I've been doing.
Right on.
Believe it or not, I got to tell you, the other day my wife gave me a hug and she's like, "Ooh, you feel buff." I was like,
Oh, well, that's
"Cool,"
fun.
because I've
Hey,
been
man.
following your plan.
That's so funny you say that because sometimes with my clients, we talk about things, forms of measurement besides the scale, right?
Yeah.
That is a good form of measurement right there. If your true love says you're buff and makes yummy noises after they hug you, then you're doing something right.
hopefully that's not TMI, right? Too much
Nah,
information, but
not at all. It's great. So Ted, tell us, you've got so much to offer, and I know you have a podcast. I know you have digital downloads of hypnosis recordings and all sorts of other great content. Tell us how people can find you and get in touch with you and get access to all this awesome stuff.
okay. So my website is tedmoreno.com. My last name is spelled Moreno, tedmoreno.com. My podcast, Ted in Your Head, can be found on your podcast app. Just look for that little, that little insignia right there. That's my logo for my podcast. Or you can go to tedinyourhead.com, which is my podcast page. Okay. Now, I haven't really advertised it yet, but I do have a website where you can download MP3s that's called PasadenaHypnosisMP3.com. I have a small selection that's getting bigger all the time, but if people want to go there, they can download MP3s from that site, PasadenaHypnosisMP3.com.
All right, that's awesome. And speaking of downloads, today we're offering a digital recording of a relaxation MP3 done by Ted, and that is available on the daily support emails on the Healthy Happy at Home email digest. If you are not a subscriber, you can subscribe for the rest of this month and on a special link that I'll put on the show notes, and you can get that download in addition to a bunch of other good stuff too. So with that, is there anything else we forgot to talk about that we think our listeners really need to hear today?
I think we covered it all. My suggestion is do what you can to stay out of overwhelm, And you'll know you're in overwhelm if you're walking around going, what am I doing? Where am I going? What am I doing? At that point, here's what you want to do. You want to tell yourself 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, eyes open, wide awake. Pull yourself out of that hypnotic state and ask yourself, okay, what's next?
All right. That's really, really great. I love that, because you just pointed out that a lot of times we are out there being hypnotized by garbage and we don't even know it, right?
Absolutely. So true. Yes.
That is so fantastic. And what a wonderful, powerful message for everyone right now during this time. And Ted, kudos to you. I want to thank you for coming out and, or staying in your house and logging on Zoom with me, whatever. Thank you for having an internet connection. And I will post all this info in the notes, and we look forward to seeing what kind of awesome feedback we get from everybody.
You're the man, Harvey. Thanks so much for having me on your show. And I was so impressed with your wood cutting workout you were doing.
Workout.
You are the man. Let me tell you, that was inspiring. Good job.
Yeah. All right. There's a little kid in me that loves attention, that just loves all this social media stuff, because it's actually okay to put pictures of yourself on the internet. Who knew?
Yep. Absolutely. Especially if you're up to cool stuff like you are.
All right. Good. All right. Well, then you take it easy. Have a great day. And thanks for joining us today, Ted.
Thanks, Harvey.
Later days.
Bye now.